Hello and welcome to Business on the Wire. I'm Mitali Mukherjee. The Indian Premier League is currently underway and is being played in Delhi, one of the cities that has been hit the hardest in terms of COVID and its impact. At last count, we have 4 lakh cases across the country, and of course, we've had more than 3,500 deaths. Both these numbers at this point, according to several experts, seem quite understated in terms of the actual impact of what's going on in cities. It's not just that. After Mumbai and Delhi, where matches have been played, the IPL Caravan, as it's called, will move to other cities like Bangalore and Kolkata, also struggling quite severely at this point in terms of the impact of COVID. It's not just what's happening with the game itself, it is the infrastructure that supports it. So when you land in Delhi, you have a separate IPL check-in counter. Testing has now changed and been shortened from 5 days to every 2 days. And of course, there are several other medical conveniences, if you want to call it that, such as ambulances on standby with a complete ICU unit that's set up for the players and for anyone else who might need it at this point. The tournament has raised strong responses. On one side, it is seen as extremely callous, badly timed, and completely out of sync with what the reality of the nation is. And on the other side, people have defended this as much needed relief from what is clearly a tragic situation. What's the reality on the ground in terms of what's going on both inside the IPL and how this could have been done differently, perhaps, in order to be sensitive to the situation that India is currently struggling through. As we stand, most cities have crumbled to their knees, and the medical infrastructure is tearing apart day by day. Joining me to talk about all of that is a name that has been associated with cricket and sport for years and years now, Sharda Ugra. She's an independent sports journalist, and she joins me to talk about the situation. Sharda, thank you for speaking with me. I live in Delhi, so here we are with the IPL schedule, or the IPL Caravan, as they like to call themselves now in Delhi. You've made your views public about the fact that you find this hugely uncomfortable. But I want to set it first in the context of Delhi, which is collapsing as we speak in terms of medical infrastructure, where cases are surging. We haven't seen any plateauing yet, and we're working with a positivity rate of 31%. And here you have the IPL.
I lived in Delhi for about 14 years. I'm originally a Bombayite, as we call ourselves. I'm from Bombay. I moved to Delhi. I left Delhi just about 7 years ago. I love living in Delhi. I enjoyed it. I have friends there. I have family there. So to see what it's going through and to hear the stories that are coming out of it is just both tragic and it is terrifying. And to see how the average citizen has been left on their own pretty much, working through social media networks of activists, of volunteers, of young people, has been, in a way, it inspires you, but it's also like you think that as a city and as a country, maybe we have been defeated in the sense of what we were owed by the people that are supposed to govern us, or supposed to look after us as the citizens of the country and of the city. In the middle of all this, for there to be IPL, it's literally like there's that movie. I don't know what movie it is. In which the character says "Ata Maji Satakli." So this is like, now I've lost it, completely. It's a Marathi phrase because I'm from Bombay, and I recognize that the intensity with which that "Ata Maji Satakli" has happened. That I cannot imagine what has got them to stage this event here. I found out yesterday that at every ground there are 3 ambulances, not one, there are 3 at every ground where the IPL is played. So there are 3 ambulances fully kitted out, sitting there. Players are getting tested, once every couple of days. They get their results within, say, about 7 or 8 hours. So there is this entire enterprise that is happening. I mean, mind you, I am a cricket fan. I love cricket. Cricket has given me my livelihood, my identity in many ways as a professional. And to see this happening to it has been it's really stunned me, and it's really confused me. I was talking to a friend this morning, and we were talking about the IPL. I knew I was coming here, so I was just doing up a bit of reading and some research and whatever. And my friend Shruti, she said this thing. We were talking about what it does and what it happens and so on. And she used a great phrase, and I'm looking for it. Um, she said she said, what do you do? We said, we are here, we are talking about what's happening in India. We are not talking about the sovereign capitalist republic of IPL. So literally, that's like what it is, a sovereign capitalist republic by itself, functioning with its own people and all of that. From what I understood, again, I've had conversations with people around this that's happening, but people inside cricket, people outside cricket, communications professionals, officials, old officials, new officials, younger players, people, and so on. And I was told that they were warned, I think maybe about 7 or 8 days ago, maybe 9 days ago, that listen, don't bring the IPL to Delhi. That the office of the IPL received this announcement saying, don't bring the IPL to Delhi, but it had become too late to take it elsewhere, because you need at least a 2 week window to kind of, to create that bubble. So you needed to have support staff, hotel staff, ground staff, everybody in the area that's going to be there to already go into a 2 week bubble, and that time had passed. So that's the reason why, despite everything, despite advice to the contrary, despite, I'm sure there are well-meaning people that are there inside the BCCI that are functioning and doing their work and their business, and they are as pained to see what's happening in Delhi as every other citizen. But this is what happened because they didn't pick up the signs when they should have, I think. And that's why you have this absurd dichotomy that's there at the moment on the ground.
So, like you said, one part of the argument is whether this is appropriate, whether this is empathetic, and we're going to address that part. But the second part, like you said, is what is the pressure on systems that are already crunching down? Just for people who are listening, to make this clearer for them, I want you to walk through what kind of medical paraphernalia is going with IPL. For example, there is an IPL testing center the moment you land at the airport, right? Testing days,
There's
as you said.
a check-in counter.
Yeah, there's a check-in counter.
Counter for the IPL people.
That's the thing is now 2 days instead of 5. If you're saying there's 3 ambulances per stadium, how many stadia are we talking about? Like just to understand the
at the moment, you're having 2 stadia in operation. So there's one in that's the one in Delhi, and that's Firozshah Kotla, Arun Jaitley Stadium as it's called now, and the one in Ahmedabad, which is named after the Prime Minister. So you're talking about 6 ambulances. Now, to everyone, 6 ambulances is a small number. But in those 6 ambulances, over a 24-hour period, you'd be able to get 30 or 40 people across wherever it is. You have to think about that. We are in a situation, you have to think about that. The testing is one thing. That ambulance sort of availability that is there. What is inside that ambulance is a completely well kitted out, sort of almost like an ICU ambulance that's there in case there was some kind of a problem. So that's the stuff that's there. There's an excellent story in Scroll about this, about this entire what the resources are. You've got police people. Just hanging around on that ground because that's their duty of the evening. So you'll have on a normal day you'll have like hundreds of policemen. They'll be hassling people for passes, but on something like this, you'll have maybe 30, 50, whatever the number is, 100, and we are hearing stories, Mitali, of because there are not enough priests available in crematorium, it's the policemen that are helping people carry out the funerals, carrying the wood that you need, so they're doing all those kind of things. But now these guys are just there, just sitting there and waiting. And I'm sure each and every person that's there in the IPL knows someone who has been affected. So this must be really ranging them from inside as well, a sizable number of them.
What do you hear when you're speaking with the players who are involved in IPL, Shanta? At this point, 3 Aussie players have, of course, they decided to head back. One Indian player also pulled out, as you said, citing the duties that he had towards his family. They're functioning in this bio bubble, but they are not immune to what's happening in their communities, families, cities.
Yeah, I'm not speaking directly to any of the current players at the moment, but what I'm talking to is people around them and what you hear from, like, as journalists, we pick up stuff. So the Aussies have gone. There are reports that there is an anxiety amongst the Australians now that are we going to be let back into our country?
Yeah.
Because the Prime Minister said that if you come back within X amount of time from India, you can be in prison. There's some government order that has come.
Yes,
So there is that anxiety sort of building up slowly amongst everyone that how are we going to get out of this? So this is a great living that we're making. We are safe, as in technically, medically, we are safe. Our Ashwin, the India player who left to support his family, his wife has messaged, he sent out a social media message today, talking about the fact that there were 6 or 7 people in her family that were unwell. And of course, he had to be there because it's draining. I mean, you know yourself what's happening. So yesterday there was a Twitter message passed by the Sheldon Jackson, who's a player from Saurashtra, part of the Saurashtra's Ranji Trophy winning team, whose aunt, I think, couldn't get a bed in Bhavnagar. And he put it out on social media. And within 10 minutes, the people in the BCCI arranged for his aunt to get this facility. So you can see that there are people that are there that know that this thing is so out of control and it's so extraordinary that they've got to push and do all these kind of things. So this is the network of people that there is. And whatever the fear or paranoia, particularly amongst the top stars of the country, we can talk about that later, that exists about talking about the situation, players are coming out and talking about it. Today, Kirti Azad, the former India player who was part of the '83 World Cup winning team, former selector, a key member in the BCCI as well, he put out a message saying that he has lost his mother-in-law and one of his uncles, and he was talking about what happened. So for all of them that this is going on, you're looking at it and saying they must be looking at what the IPL and thinking what is going on. What is the issue that is there. So while families are happy that their family members inside the IPL bubble are safe, it doesn't mean that the people inside the IPL bubble are feeling good about it in any way. That they're feeling that because they've got friends and family and they've got people that are struggling and suffering and to reach out to. And it's almost like it's like a golden cage, at this point in time. If you're inside it, it's a cage. You can't escape it. And the moment the Australian players left, there were all these snarky sort of things that they weren't part of the first 11 anyway, and it's almost like you have forgotten that there are human beings both suffering outside and having to endure this inside the IPL bubble. We understand that it has to happen for business reasons and everything else, but the inappropriateness of it is just beyond. You can't ignore it.
Let me take some of those counter arguments, so that I can hear your views on it, where people have been quoted, unnamed people have been quoted from within the BCCI or the organizers of IPL saying, this is a much needed distraction for a country at this point of time. That's number one. Secondly, people are sitting home and it's preventing them from stepping out and hence preventing the spread. That's number two. And number three, like you said, there's so much money riding on this. The economy needs to get back on its feet. This is the great step one to do that.
This is absolutely not the step one to do that. Step one would have been to read the reports that are coming out of it, talk to the experts, and see that something was building. Something was building in a way that was going to come back, and therefore have contingency plans in place that would have said. Yesterday there was a statement that said we could move the World T20, which is supposed to take place in October. So everyone's forgotten about it. There should have been a contingency plan in place for moving this back to the UAE if you have to.
Yeah.
To take care of that, because the UAE's conditions were not that bad and so on. So the IPL employs approximately about 1,200 people. This is my rough, just back of the envelope kind of a guess. 1,200 people, which includes broadcasters and people, ground staff, and everyone else that's there. All the gig economy people, all of it. So you're saying it's fine, and the part about the distraction is also fine, but I have my whole problem with how the IPL is putting itself out is the tone of its I was going to say the tone of its deafness, which is not a correct phrase. I was going to say is it is the manner in which it's being looked at to see that, okay, we are just going to brush everything outside. We are going to take you away into this fantasy land where, the independent capitalist republic of the IPL is going to whisk you away and your problems away. Now, again, that is for people that are ill, that are at home, that need something to do because their minds are crazy and are going crazy, and the disease is just has knocked out your energy, knocked out your immunity, your breathing, lung capacity, all those things. It's fine. What about the people that have lost people in this, that are struggling on the streets? There has to be some acknowledgement of that. There is a young writer and podcaster called Abhishek Bakshi, if I'm not wrong, and I read something in his tweet that has stuck with me for the last 10 days. He was talking about all these marketing plans that are going out of all these people that are putting out new products because they have to. He said, please remember what's happening around you. And he used these three words. He said, please tone accordingly. And that's all you want the IPL to do. Please tone accordingly. Then there are many ways to do it. So if you're being a balm and if you're being distracting, don't tell people to wash your hands because people are dying on the roads. Why are people going out on the roads these days? Because they're trying to get their loved ones to hospital. Why are people just we can go off into many various sort of streams of argument, but my whole thing is please tone accordingly. I mean, I think Abhishek should trademark that expression, really, because you have to accept the reality of what's happening in your country. As I said earlier, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, Shata, that in fact, instead of toning it accordingly, and you mentioned this to me earlier, it's almost like the IPL has now developed a victim complex, saying, Are, you don't say anything about music and you don't say anything about films. Why is everyone only training their guns on IPL?
They're training no one is training their guns on it because you're in our face every day, and the whole victim complex thing, that listen, you are the biggest sports event that happens in the country every year. You are the biggest club, the biggest cricket event that happens in the world. That's what you take pride in. I'm a sports journalist. You're a sports event. I'm not going to, you're in front of me. I'm not going to pretend that, listen, let me take care of their feelings and not offend them and let me, no one wants to listen to me about election rallies. I'm not, that's not my domain knowledge or expertise or anything. I mean, the election rallies are horrific, but this is also bad. And you can't say that, music is going on. And are there rock concerts going on at the moment? I don't think in the country that there are rock concerts going on. I don't think. And everyone's saying it also happened in, and then you're doing all this whataboutery of nonsense of, but when they played football in England and all. When they opened the Premier League season last year, everyone said, this is the big sports industrial complex, which I also agree. Sort of the machine has started moving. What they did was they said, we are going to test all our players because we have to see how can this bubble thing work, which became like almost a model for all sports events to take place. And at the same time, that same company said, for free, we are going to test. We are going to go out into the community and test people also, the same number. So again, there is that connect with the community. There is that connect with the people, with the fans. Everyone takes great pride in the fact that 80% of the cricket money comes from India. 80% of the fans may come from India. This is happening to 80% of those fans. What do you have to say to them? You have to tone accordingly. No one is saying you don't describe fours or sixes or whatever. You just find a way to do it that is both measured and respectful, and you are repeating what it said. The moment there was some noise about it, and it stopped being about wash your hands, and it stopped being about that. It has to be something. It's gone beyond the pandemic that was there last year. This is our own almost mutant horror version of the COVID virus that has hit us. And you have to do more. You, as a sport, you are the number one sport in the country. You have to do more.
Do you think this might have been dealt with differently if there was different leadership in place, either for the BCCI or for the folks managing IPL? Do you think this might have been dealt with differently as it is now? As you said, there is just no toning because there is no acceptance of the fact that a crisis exists.
A lot of the older cricket administrators, they're like who you talk to, a career administrators, they're tearing their hair out in frustration and saying, like, this has to be managed. This could have been managed much better. You would have to think that last year, I think at one point, they had literally cleaned out the professional executive office that there is in the BCCI. The people whose job is to do the stuff, to pay the salaries, to pay the players, to sort out the contracts. Today, there was a story in Indian Express that said that players from Bihar had not been paid for the last 2 seasons because of some panga they have with them. I don't know, some political panga. I know, but it's another this thing. So an office that deals with that, the independent people in that office have been just taken away because they annoyed somebody, they didn't want them there, they wanted the power. So that whole mix of the BCCI separating its management of daily affairs from its policy, that has not happened because we're going to go back to Lodha recommendations, and that is a whole big thing. But a certain sensitivity to be able to listen to other people is what is important at this time. And to my mind, what seems to be reflected both in the way in which the BCCI is conducting the IPL is almost reflected in the way the government is responding to the national crisis that there is. That there isn't any, that the ambassadors are being told this is a one-sided narrative. There is no, there is no one-sided narrative. So it's reflected inside. And the other very interesting thought that came up when I was speaking to someone, he said, listen, currently, it's happened in the past that the BCCI has been headed by people who are not part of the ruling regime, so to speak, ruling party, whatever. At that time, had this happened this time, Sharad Pawar was once president of the BCCI, whatever that, about 10-ish years ago. Had he been the president of the BCCI now, I don't think they would have allowed the IPL to happen. I don't think this government would allow that IPL to happen. They would say, take it away, take it elsewhere. We don't care. And the whole thing is, as a public, we would have responded to this. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense to do it. But it's not happened this time. And the sad part of it is that it has a player president. The first most influential and most famous and well-known player president is Saurav Ganguly. He is in charge. So, and his secretary is Jay Shah, or Jay Shah is in charge. The person in charge is obviously not making the right calls. So whoever wants to put their hand up and say, I'm in charge, you'll say, yeah, you're making the mistake. So make up your mind who that is,
One is what's happening at the managerial level, Shada, and the other is what's happening with the icons. And in that, there are parallels with, I guess, what's happening with the Bollywood icons. People who are larger than life, who you look to, you want to hear them say something, some words of commiseration. That's been radio silence.
Yeah. So what's happening now, like what we are seeing is from the time, so you had players that are not the superstar status, so you had Ashwin, who was using his social media feed, a current player. Then you had Irfan, Wasim Jafar, and Harbhajan Singh. Harbhajan is still playing. Wasim Jafar, Irfan is doing commentary. Wasim Jafar is in the support staff. So they put their social media feeds out. They were doing things. Harbhajan did something there. And you have seen a lot of the less famous, less popular players come out and do stuff. Like, I made a list because I have to sort of hold on to everything. There was yesterday, I have to tell you this, it's again, Australian journalists. There's an Australian Journalists Association that donated some money saying we are so pained to see what's happening. So they sent some money in for COVID relief with a particular charity that was there. So you had Tendulkar come out with an announcement of a donation of a crore of rupees to an oxygen converter facility. Jaidev Unadkat spoke for the first time yesterday, the first player that's taking part, current. And Jaidev Unadkat is not a superstar, right? He spoke for the first time. Suresh Raina opened talked about the issue and said, okay, I'm going to put my social media feed out and so on. Shikhar Dhawan this morning made a statement as well. And the moment this keeps happening, you're going to say, where are the big stars? Where is your captain? I'm looking for the word. What you got the most sense of proportion is when the Indian football captain, Sunil Chhetri, said, I am handing over my Twitter account to people who are in charge. He said, they are the true captains.
Guys, I'm on your team. Those are powerful.
Yeah, I'm on your team. Yeah. The Indian football captain, Sunil Chhetri, he plays for BFC. He did this. And now you're thinking, he said, where is the cricket captain who has 100 million followers? What is happening on his social media feed? What is happening on the IPL social media feed? What is happening on Rohit Sharma's social media feed? So that is where you are seeing, maybe, it's interpretation. We are not reading their minds, but we're saying, say something. I can't speak on behalf of say the Bollywood people, they have their own um,
Pulls and pressure,
I
I
don't-
guess.
yes, yes. But how can thank you? uh, how can someone of Virat Kohli's influence feel a pull and a pressure that is not that is bigger than what is happening around him? To his city, this is his city. Virat Kohli is Dilli ka ladka. He comes from West Delhi. This is his place. So that is the thing. That is what you have to. You're saying who's advising them. You have to ask who's advising them, and who, if at all, is trying to silence them, and why. Those are the two questions you have to ask yourself, because like these are just superstars, but they're not bad guys. They are not I don't care or whatever. There obviously has to be something going on there. These are just young men, young Indian men, famous, rich, wealthy, entitled Indian men in their late 20s, and they're stuck and they're trapped in this situation. So it's almost like this golden cage sort of thing again. You want them to speak, you want them to say something. So you had Rajasthan Royals have also, and the Australian players are. So one of the one of the communications people I was talking to yesterday, he said when Pat Cummins first put out that message saying I'm donating $50,000, they thought that this was some ploy by the Australian establishment to get back at that whole thing with the High Commissioner's letter to the Australian newspaper, etc., etc. So it was being interpreted in many ways, but it was just Pat Cummins saying, "I want to give $50,000 and wherever I want to donate it." And another Australian spoke out, and then the Australian journalists have sent in money, and then Rajasthan Royals says they're doing something, and Delhi Capitals is doing something. Said, where is the embodiment of Delhi cricket, which is Virat Kohli? So you don't hear his voice. You don't hear. As of to date, I haven't checked his feed. Maybe his social media feed is with you, Mitali. Just check. I've
Yeah.
not heard anything that said
Yeah.
in a way that said, take my social media feed and amplify whatever you need to amplify. And he's got a team working on it. He's not sitting and tweeting himself the whole time. So
You have to
get
ask
that done.
that. What is the fear here? Because I did read some stray reports, and I don't think any of this is confirmed. Was that not so much for speaking out, but players may have been sort of threatened around their contracts in terms of choosing to pull out and the repercussions it would have on future contracts. But for someone of this stature, what is the fear?
To I mean, rocking the boat perhaps. And when you compare all this to what happened to that India Together with that Rihanna and Greta Thunberg tweet and everything, you're saying like, what? He said, what is that? That was one tweet about these farmers that are still outside Delhi fighting for their right, and all of you just chad gaya sab uske unke upar, and so like there are. I'm like going beyond. I have to convince myself not to start ranting again and just be calm.
Please do. Let it.
So yeah, deep breaths. The fear the way I look at it, the fear is that if someone of that fame and someone of that stature and popularity and celebrity status puts something out and says that we need help, it shows that something is not correct, and that's not the message the government wants to give. That something is not correct. So you have almost become yourself arms of the government when you didn't have to. You are a representative of cricket. You are not a representative of anything else but cricket. Cricket has made you who you are. And how can anyone? And my theory about my question about this is always, suppose there are three people that have 7 crore contracts. That's $1.1 million, 1 point something $1 million. That's Jasprit Bumrah, Rohit Sharma, and Virat Kohli. Suppose your contract got scrapped. Are you guys without any money? And they say you have. First of all, you can go to court and question this. I mean, now court is now. Speaking of future, where courts are fair and equitable to citizens' rights, to life and employment and worship, you will have so much public support if your position is challenged, or you are in that sense, if you are countered, you will not be in this day and age. You cannot become a pariah from the system. If you could have done 20 years ago, you could have done that say 30 years ago. You could have turned a cricketer and just knocked him out of the system. He'd have been invisible, but not anymore. You cannot do it. So you need to be able to, so that is the fear. So I said it's not an absence of courage, but the presence of fear that is stopping them. Or whatever it is. Their managers are telling them, don't say anything, don't say anything, keep it down, keep it down, keep your head down, keep your head down. That's the advice, to my mind, is what they're getting. No need, keep quiet, it'll pass. It won't pass. The IPL has 4 weeks more to go. The final is on the 30th. It's not going to pass. So people are going to die between now and then.
Is it that I mean, for the larger framework, Shata, is it that examples don't exist on how to have done this differently? Because you told me as well that there are examples for smaller cricket communities and how they manage to do this in a far
It's
more
a question of,
manner.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a question of community. You have to have that feeling of community. It's not just about you, it is about your community. At this point, when you are negotiating a contract, of course, nobody negotiates any contract in Indian cricket. You're given the contract, you sign it. When you are in that position and everybody, your bhai band, or what you say, your calm is around you and they are suffering, it is that. I mean, so there are many remarkable stories about what's happening at smaller levels. In Uganda, for example, the Uganda has a cricket association. They have a small number of players. Their annual budget is the annual contract of Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma or Jasprit Bumrah. $1.1 million is their annual budget. Last year, when they faced the pandemic for the first time and everything was shut down, said what they did was they started giving aid to their staff. They started giving aid to their teachers that would go out and teach cricket in schools. They started giving aid to their players. They gave them money, salary, whatever. There's a stadium, I think, in Kampala. Around that stadium, the entire neighborhood that is there, that's a low-income neighborhood, they went out and gave them medicines and domestic supplies, soaps, medicines, whatever, masks, anything. That's what they did. This is a cricket community on a $1.1 million budget. If you can do this, and I wrote a story for the Hindustan Times about the Bhutanese cricket people that, again, a very small country, their people chipped in, became part of almost like a home guards kind of a program, and then went and helped out in whatever way they could. One of them is a nurse. And so you're saying, okay, these are amateur cricket nations. These are small cricket nations. India is a big nation. Exactly. So you have bigger resources, you have bigger funds, you have bigger networks. You can make all of that work. So like the example of Sheldon Jackson's story that's there. So it's going on at a level that below that is happening, but it's not happening at the apex, which is your IPL. It's nothing. It's like we have to present this to the world, because what goes out to everybody around the world that takes the IPL match coverage is the world feed. So the world feed from India has to look like nothing is happening, and it's become part of the. I mean, I just thought about this like the last 2 seconds ago. It's almost like the IPL is now part of the government propaganda machinery. That, see, we are holding a sports event, this big event. All international players are here. Everything is fine. And would you like to be part of a propaganda machinery as a sports person? I don't think so. At the moment, we are not functioning like this was the Soviet Union, and therefore you had to. At the moment. But in the Soviet Union, you can understand athletes being part of the propaganda machinery. But at the moment, we are not yet the Soviet Union of the 1970s and the Cold War and everything.
And like you said, Shada, there's still a long way to go. And the problem is that now it moves from Delhi into the two cities, Kolkata and Bangalore. Kolkata, which already is working on the assumption that one in every two people is positive. Bangalore, that's had to take land outside the city because they're running short in terms of space to cremate the dead bodies. Do you expect there to be any change or any pivot from now up until that end point? Because you're actually working your way into cities which are deeper and deeper in crisis.
Yes, what you pointed out was quite interesting, because already in Bangalore there have been people that have said, "Take it away, don't take it here, let's not move it." Now the point is, you had the whole example of Delhi that's going on. You still had time. You had time before that to say, "Okay, let's not take it to these last two places." And election results are going to come tomorrow from Bengal, and everyone believes that after the results out, it's going to be lockdown. So again, and Delhi is under curfew. In a city in curfew, you're playing cricket. You're going to go to Calcutta, in a city in lockdown. We are in lockdown in Bangalore now for another, I think, a week or so, and then I think it'll be maybe 8-9 days more, and then it'll definitely get extended. There's no way it won't. So I was sent a very interesting sort of little segment from a column that Shobha Day has written today. I'll just read out a little bit to you. She said, "My friend Vandana Shah She's senior counsel for the National Commission for Women, has filed a PIL against the BCCI to stop, cancel, postpone the IPL under the present conditions. She has also demanded a donation of 1,000 crores, small change for BCCI, by way of a penalty. So this is one thing that's happened. I mean, given how we've gone in these kind of cases over the last few years, you would think that the BCCI has enough power to, as they say, kick this one out of the. But at least it's there. At least the voice is there. And another thing to point out at this point, Mitali, is that the BCCI has enough money to pay out the contract of everybody at the IPL, pay out all their salaries and say, for the moment, Dukan Ban, go home. But it's not going to happen. I mean, it's not practical. It's not going to happen. I know it. I know it's not going to happen. But they have those kind of resources. So to say, let the IPL get over and then we'll get money is an absolutely unacceptable argument, because it's not as if you don't have any money in the bank already. It's not as if you struggle from season to season, IPL season to season. It's not like that. So you would want there to be, he said, please tone accordingly. That's all that I'm saying, that it would have to take something of, I don't know, what proportions to change this path on which they have set out. Going by the track record of the people in charge, I would think that's not going to happen, because if you're going ahead with the Central Vista project, with people working 12-hour shifts, when there is death and tragedy happening around you, then the IPL is compared to that is nothing. It's like a little small irritant for in public consciousness and in public sense of sentiment and horror and whatever it is.
Yeah. One final question, Sharda, on the IPL is big, of course, as an event in itself, but it's also big for the media, right? I mean, this makes for a lot of viewing. It makes for a lot of chatter, whether you're writing op-eds or otherwise. And here as well, you have this, bipolar reaction, where you have someone like the New Indian Express saying that they will suspend coverage of the tournament because they call it commercialism gone crass. But then you have the Indian Express defending this, saying it's misguided moral outrage to call for an end. Cricket or cinema or music offers a reprieve. The responsibility for fighting the pandemic is not on players or celebrities, but on state and central governments. What do you think the media should be thinking right now? What's the deep dive that we should be doing ourselves about how we approach this?
I think, the compartmentalization in a situation like this of, oh, we are the IPL, we are doing a social service to the country, and what's happening outside the country. First of all, I think it has to be called out at every time it happens. I'm not going to sort of pass any judgment on what the larger media should be doing, but I think in the sports media, it should be called out as often as it can. Now, you do understand that there are young sports journalists who are very angry. They are just enraged, but they're working. They have jobs. They have bosses who don't want to, who will not stand for anything like this being published and printed. So you understand that as well. The New Indian Express story I read those pages every day. The paper comes home where they have this section. It says our IPL part of our page, and they tell you IPL stories. And it's a lot of this about how sports people are helping. I mean, the football community has been outstanding. John Abraham's club, Northeast United, has put out its social media feed to help, everyone looking for assistance. But the Indian Express had called in its office staff to come to work, and there are people that are ill from there. So you've got all these contradictions that are going on. The only thing is, whoever can call it out, I think you should call it out as much as you can. Never mind what. The whole thing is the Indian cricket. Indian cricket is, it's a little bit of it's a gravy train. It's a shop. It's like a really nice mall that you can go to and get. It's not that you're buying stuff there. You're earning stuff there. You can sell your talent and your wares and everything in this big shop that is Indian cricket. So people don't want to call it out because that opportunity will go. And who are we to pass judgment on people that are sort of trying to make a living? That are normal people. There are people with medium incomes who are sort of sitting there. Medium incomes, minimal power. No, but people at the top, it has to be called out. It has to be called out for this this thing of how, and it's happened. People have written pieces, a couple of pieces, but it has to be called out literally all the time, because we can see that this whole movement towards saying why is nothing happening, why is nothing happening. It's almost like people that the people in sport that are there, they said no, we have to do something. It's like they were almost into coming up with some response to say, yeah, I agree with this, I feel I should do, let me just go ahead and do it, and then devil may take the consequences or whatever happens. I think that is what you have to do, because if the people that are in the sports media, if they kind of go quiet about it and saying, "Bhai, now it's happening, let it happen," then it'll just be allowed to be this IPL 2021, which will be looked at, I think, the next 10 years later with complete horror. And all of us will be seen as enablers of allowing this kind of thing to happen. That is what you say, just call it out as often as you can.
Shraddha, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for coming, giving me the time, and being so honest and raw and real with what the situation is like. I know on the outside, I'm not a sports journalist, so you just look at it and feel enraged, but I cannot imagine what people whose life and times have been cricket are feeling about this situation right now. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Mitali. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.